Testing 1, 2, 3, Part 1, by Humongous. Quote, "There isn't anybody in the United States who isn't a downwinder either. When we followed the clouds, we went all over the United States from east to west and covering a broad spectrum of Mexico and Canada. Where are you going to draw the line? Everyone is a downwinder. It circles the earth, round and round. What comes around, goes around." Unquote. Langdon Harrison, Cloud Sampler. Downwinder. Definition: a person exposed to radioactive fallout due to nuclear detonations, nuclear weapons testing, or nuclear accidents. So, what do you do for work? Well, Ned, I was a cloud sampler. The nescient neighbor smiled with jubilation. A cloud sampler. Ned, nosier than Jimmy Durante, pictured the man who just moved next door sucking off a white-bearded cartoon deity, floating above a road of gold in the sky. That sounds wonderful. Rex lit a cancer stick, inhaling deeply. At this point, what did it matter? He had a major organ removed thanks to a bocce ball-sized tumor, and was weeks from suffering the most painful death he could envision, due to some sort of noma. For this, he had the US of A to blame. Rex exhaled. Honestly, I'd rather rent my ass out as the hangar for the Spruce Goose. How the fuck does flying a plane into the insanely radioactive stem of a man-made mushroom cloud help anyone? Yet, that's what the US government forced its own pilots to do during atomic and thermonuclear trials. And this was solely one instance of maniacal tests performed on unwitting American subjects by their own bureaucracy when it came to anthropogenic radioactivity. What of homeless and retarded children fed radionuclide-laced oatmeal just to see what it would do to their bodies? How about more than 800 pregnant women secretly coerced by their own doctors to drink a concoction containing radioactive iron? And who can forget US soldiers ordered to fight mock battles at ground zero of nuclear tests hours after detonation? The above and so much more awaited contestants playing America, Reality or Illusion, following the dawn of the atomic era. Gordon Shattuck was being raped. He was just a young boy, and one of the attendants at the Walter E. Fernald State School in Waltham, Massachusetts, had locked him inside a restroom. There, windows were thrown open, and the nude child was doused with frigid water in this winter climate. When Gordon finally acquiesced to the guard's demands for sex, the probability of hypothermia ceased. Amongst this backdrop of horror, the young boys of the aforementioned institution, either homeless or retarded, were continually abused. For the most insignificant infraction, youths were condemned to sleep upon metal box springs minus mattresses. School floors were polished via, quote, rope rubbing, unquote, as children were forced to clean tiles on hands and knees with a weighty carpeted log that was dangling from their necks. Youths at Fernald were divided into categories: idiots, those with an IQ less than 20, imbeciles, boys possessing IQs below 50, and morons, children with an intelligence quotient higher than the latter. Enter the Science Club, a chance for salvation thanks to the United States government. As effective as wearing a condom on one's foot, don't these hegemonies seem to ride in at the last moment to, quote, save the day, unquote? Massachusetts Institute of Technology determined Fernald was the perfect environment at which to test the effects of radioactivity on humans. As reward for being naive guinea pigs, kids were provided trips to the beach. On the East Coast? What a treat! The chance to attend baseball games and Christmas parties with the same fuckers who irradiated them. Mickey Mouse watches, thanks to Walt Disney, who knowingly worked with Nazi war criminals post-World War II, were bequeathed the lucky children. Besides apple pie, the killing of brown people, and lying politicians, not to be redundant, what could possibly be more American? Why, oatmeal, of course. Thus, youths at Fernald were prepared a steady diet of this nutritional staple, complete with the added ingredients of radioactive calcium and iron. All the kids had to do was lick their bowls clean. "What is it?" Helen Hutchison asked. "It's a little cocktail. It'll make you feel better," the doctor she trusted responded. Being pregnant, Helen replied, "Well, I don't know if I ought to be drinking a cocktail." "Drink it all. Drink it on down," the obstetrician ordered. Helen complied with the physician's demands. After all, he was the doctor, right? He knew what was best for her. Little did the gullible woman realize the libation she'd been fed was brimming with radioactive iron. Helen was not alone, as 829 pregnant females at Vanderbilt University Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee, were provided the same, quote, special sauce, unquote, during the 1940s. Who played bartender? The United States government, of course, doubling as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, with financial backing via the Rockefeller Foundation. Months following, Helen's face swelled up like a sponge, water blisters marring her normally attractive appearance. She was in her early 20s when she lost her hair. A pair of miscarriages ensued, the latter of which forced her to endure 16 blood transfusions. Barbara, Helen's daughter, would develop a disorder of the immune system as well as skin cancer. Again, Helen and her progeny were not alone. Numerous women, given the cocktail, lost their hair and teeth, and contracted life-threatening maladies. Carolyn Kraft, whose mother Emma was provided the damaging brew while pregnant, endured numerous surgeries to remove an aggressive cancer that had overtaken her body. Black growths were extracted from her mouth, and Carolyn's face became deformed. The child lost the ability to use her legs and eventually died at 11 years old. Take a look at John Smitherman's left hand. Not now, of course, since John's been dead 31 years at this point. But watch the movie Radio Bikini, in which John, a U.S. soldier stationed in the Marshall Islands during nuclear tests, is being interviewed. His left hand is swollen to the size of a catcher's mitt. Fingers the circumference of substantial bananas. If that wasn't painful enough to gaze upon, how about gawking at both John's legs, or what was left of them, as the camera angle widens, exposing stumps amputated at the knees. Roughly 3 months following the interview, John would be dead, his agony hopefully over. Mr. Smitherman was one of thousands of United States soldiers assigned to the Marshall Islands, while his own government detonated the most deadly weapons to date around him. Ordnances so destructive, many of them were hundreds of times more lethal than atomic bombs dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Destruction so atrocious, radionuclides dispersed into the air as a result will be present in some cases millions of years. Fallout so egregious, those like John, who were exposed to it, ran serious risk of contracting the most severe cancers known to humans. As far as protective clothing was concerned, what were John and his fellow soldiers provided? Loose shirts and shorts. Envision garb as impervious to fallout as a beefy tee available in the discounted men's section at Target. Moreover, due to the moderate climate, soldiers typically went topless while lethal radioactive particles rained down on them. What were John and his colleagues told about the dangers innate to radioactive fallout? Obviously nothing, as they were going about assigned tasks, outdoors, on decks of ships, and in the ocean, while cancer-causing elements were drenching them. Hours following a nuclear test, soldiers were ordered to board boats inside blast zones and take radiation readings. What stopped military minions from touching the hulls of these insanely irradiated vessels? Nothing. Certainly not their commanding officers, as this was all part of a demented trial to determine who would become sick and die and who wouldn't. In fact, pigs, rats, and sheep used as test subjects were placed in cages on these ships to ascertain effects of nuclear blasts. Far be it for the men who positioned them there to understand they themselves were also guinea pigs of a maniacal regime, a bureaucracy they trusted and took an oath to protect. As the Atomic Veterans newsletter stated, quote, "We were the victims of radiation experiments too. They exposed over 200,000 of us in over 200 atomic and hydrogen bomb tests between 1945 and 1962. They deliberately bombed us with nuclear weapons and exposed us to deadly radioactivity to see how it would affect us and our equipment in nuclear warfare on land, on sea, and in the air. They didn't need our informed consent because we were under military discipline. They devalued our lives too. They made us sterile. They crippled and killed our children. They made widows of our wives, then denied repeatedly and publicly that there was ever any danger." Unquote.